You don't even deserve to wash dishes. Get out of here before I call security." The man in an expensive suit yelled with contempt, pointing toward the door of the city's most elegant restaurant. The 19-year-old girl, dressed in simple clothes and worn sneakers, lowered her head while other customers laughed and whispered cruel comments. Nobody there imagined that this humiliated girl possessed something that would completely change the situation. Sofia Mendez had just arrived in the capital after a 12-hour bus ride. She came from a small town in the countryside where she had grown up with her grandparents after her parents died in a car accident when she was only 8 years old. Her grandparents were humble people. He worked as a construction worker and she as a seamstress, but they always gave Sofia lots of love and education. They made enormous sacrifices so she could study, even selling the small house where they lived to pay for a private business administration college. Sofia was a brilliant girl. From a young age, she showed impressive intelligence for business. At 12, she was already selling candy at school and achieving profit margins that impressed even adults. At 15, she created a small business making and selling sandwiches on the city streets. The money she earned was always divided with her grandparents, and she saved a portion for her studies. When she graduated high school, she already had enough savings to support herself in the capital and still help her grandparents. But Sofia's story was more complex than anyone could imagine. What nobody knew was that her parents, before dying, had left her an inheritance she had only recently discovered when she turned 18. The documents were kept with a lawyer in the capital, and Sofia had come to the city precisely to resolve this legal matter. The inheritance wasn't cash, but rather shares in various businesses her parents had invested in throughout their lives. On the morning of that fateful day, Sofia had left the lawyer's office with a folder full of documents and contracts she didn't completely understand yet. The lawyer had explained that she was in fact heir to a considerable fortune, including shares in restaurants, hotels, and even commercial real estate. But Sofia was a simple girl and didn't really believe that story. She thought maybe it was some mistake, or that the values were much smaller than what the lawyer was saying. Curious to see one of the establishments that supposedly belonged to her, Sofia decided to visit Le Grand Palais, a French restaurant that, according to the papers, she owned 60% of the shares. It was one of the most exclusive places in the city, frequented by politicians, businessmen, and celebrities. Sofia had never entered such an elegant place in her life. When she reached the door, she already felt intimidated by the luxurious decoration and well-dressed customers. The doorman looked up her and down with disgust. Sofia was wearing simple jeans, a basic blouse, and sneakers that were over 2 years old. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried only a small canvas bag. To anyone who saw her, she looked like a small-town girl lost in the big city. "Excuse me," Sofia said timidly to the doorman. "I'd like to speak with the restaurant manager." The doorman laughed in her face. "Girl, this isn't the place for you. Go find a McDonald's around the corner." Sofia felt her face burn with shame, but insisted, "Please, it's important. I need to talk about a business matter." The doorman looked at her with even more contempt. "What, business matter? What are you selling? Girl Scout cookies?" Other customers began paying attention to the discussion. An elegant lady commented loud enough for Sofia to hear, "How absurd to let anyone approach the door. Where's the security at this place?" A middle-aged man added, "That's why I prefer the upscale neighborhood restaurants. They know how to filter their clientele better." Sofia tried to explain that she had important documents, but the doorman wouldn't even listen. That's when Ricardo Montero appeared, the restaurant's general manager. Ricardo was a 45-year-old man, extremely arrogant, who thought he was superior to everyone. He had started as a waiter at the same restaurant 20 years earlier, but climbed the hierarchy through flattery and internal politics. Now he behaved as if he owned the place. "What's the problem here?" Ricardo asked with an authoritative voice. The doorman explained that some random girl was insisting on entering and talking about business matters. Ricardo looked at Sofia with the same contempt. "Listen here, girl. I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but this isn't the place for you. This restaurant is frequented by classy people. You don't even deserve to wash dishes here. Get out of it before I call security." Ricardo's words echoed through the entrance hall, making several customers stop their conversations to watch the scene. Sofia felt her face burn with shame, but insisted. "Sir, I have documents that prove—" Ricardo interrupted her abruptly. "Documents? What documents? Birth certificate, work permit? This isn't an employment agency." The humiliation was becoming unbearable. Other employees approached to see what was happening. A waitress whispered to another, "Poor girl, but she really doesn't look like someone who frequents this type of place." A sommelier commented, "Must be some crazy girl who saw the restaurant on TV and thought she could just walk in." Sophia took a deep breath and made another attempt. "Please, I just need 5 minutes. I have papers here that show—" Ricardo exploded with rage. "Enough! You're starting to disturb our customers. Miguel," he shouted to the security guard, "escort this girl to the street and make it clear she can't come near here again." The security guard, a large and intimidating man, approached Sophia. At that moment, she realized nobody there would listen to her. The humiliation was complete. Customers looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. Some even took photos with their phones, probably to post on social media with some cruel comment. "Fine," Sophia said quietly, swallowing her tears. But before going, she turned to Ricardo and said with a firmer voice, "You're going to regret what you just did." Ricardo burst out laughing. "Oh yeah? What are you going to do? File a complaint? Call the press?" He laughed even louder, making other employees laugh along. Sophia left the restaurant with her head held high, but inside she was devastated. On the sidewalk, she stopped for a moment to collect herself. She opened the folder she was carrying and looked at the documents again. There it was, in black and white. She owned 60% of Le Grand Palais. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a scam. It was real.
Sophia immediately returned to the lawyer's office. Dr. Henry Almeida was an experienced man who had been a close friend of Sophia's parents. When she told him what had happened, he shook his head sadly. "Sophia, I imagined this might happen. That's why I wanted to explain the situation better before you visited the establishments." Dr. Henry then told the complete truth about Sophia's inheritance. Her parents, Marina and Carlos Mendez, weren't the simple people Sophia thought they were. Marina came from a wealthy family, but had rebelled against her conservative parents when she fell in love with Carlos, an older man who was less financially favored. Marina's parents disinherited her, but she didn't care. The couple decided to build their own fortune. Carlos was a business visionary, and Marina had a natural talent for investments. Over 15 years, they built a small empire. They started by buying a small, failing restaurant and transformed it into a success. With the profits, they bought another, then another. They diversified investments, bought real estate, hotel shares. When they died, at 35 and 38 years old respectively, they already owned a fortune valued at over $50 million. Their will was clear. Everything would remain in a trust for Sophia until she turned 18. During that time, the businesses would be managed by professional managers, and Sophia would only learn about the inheritance when she reached legal age. Marina and Carlos wanted their daughter to have a normal childhood, away from the pressures and responsibilities of the business world. "But why doesn't anyone at the restaurants know who I am?" Sophia asked. Dr. Henry explained that the managers of the establishments didn't know about Sophia's existence. To them, the shares belonged to a family holding company they had never met personally. Board meetings were conducted by Dr. Henry himself, who represented the family's interests. "So I really own all of this?" Sophia still couldn't completely believe it. "Not just own, Sophia. You're the majority shareholder of 8 restaurants, 3 hotels, and sole owner of 12 commercial properties in the city's central area. Your current fortune, considering the appreciation of the businesses over the years, is valued at approximately $85 million. Sophia remained silent for a few minutes, processing everything. Then she asked, "And now, what do I do?" Dr. Henry smiled. "Now, you take control of your businesses. But first, how about we teach those people who humiliated you a lesson?" The next morning, Dr. Henry called Le Grand Palais and asked to speak with Ricardo. "Mr. Montero, this is Dr. Henry Almeida, attorney representing the holding company that owns the restaurant. I need to schedule an urgent meeting with you this afternoon. It's about a change in the establishment's corporate structure." Ricardo got nervous. Meetings with the holding company always meant changes, and changes weren't always good for employees. "Of course, Dr. Henry. What time would be convenient?" 3 p.m., and please gather the entire management team. Everyone needs to be present." Sophia spent the morning preparing. She went to an upscale clothing store and bought an impeccable executive suit. She went to a beauty salon and got a professional hairstyle. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The shy, small-town girl had transformed into a confident executive. At exactly 3 p.m., Sophia arrived at Le Grand Palais, accompanied by Dr. Henry and 2 other lawyers. This time, the doorman didn't recognize her and treated her with all the reverence due to a well-dressed executive. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How may I help you?" "We have a scheduled meeting with the manager," Sophia responded with a firm voice. Ricardo came down to receive them in the main lobby. When he saw Sophia, his face went pale. He recognized her immediately, but couldn't understand what was happening. "Dr. Henry," Ricardo stuttered, "I didn't know the lady would be accompanying you." "Mr. Montero," Dr. Henry said formally, "I'd like to introduce Sophia Mendez, the new majority owner of the restaurant." Ricardo's jaw literally dropped. The doorman, who was standing beside them, widened his eyes. Other employees who were nearby stopped what they were doing. "What do you mean, owner?" Ricardo could barely speak. "Miss Sophia," Dr. Henry explained, "has just assumed control of 60% of the shares of this establishment according to the inheritance left by her parents. She was here yesterday for a first visit and told me how she was received." Ricardo's blood ran cold. He remembered perfectly the girl he had humiliated the day before. Now she was there, elegantly dressed, as the new owner of the restaurant where he had worked for 20 years. Sophia looked directly into Ricardo's eyes. "Mr. Montero, do you remember what you said to me yesterday, that I didn't even deserve to wash dishes here?" Ricardo started sweating. "Miss Sophia, I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Sophia repeated the words slowly. "It didn't seem like a misunderstanding when you humiliated me in front of all the customers, or when you told security to throw me out." Ricardo was desperate. "Please, Miss Sophia, I can explain. I didn't know who you were. If I had known—" "So the problem is that you didn't know who I was?" Sophia interrupted. "You mean if I were a regular person without money, it would be acceptable to treat me that way?" Ricardo didn't know how to respond. He was trapped by his own logic. Sophia continued, "You know what this tells me about your character, Mr. Montero? That you judge people by appearance and what they have in their wallet. That you treat badly those you consider inferior and only respect those with power. Is that the kind of person I want representing my businesses?" The doorman, who had also participated in the humiliation, tried to hide behind other employees, but Sophia saw him. "You too, Miguel. Remember what you said yesterday? That I should find a McDonald's?" Miguel lowered his head in shame. Dr. Henry opened a folder and took out some documents. "Miss Sophia, as the new owner, you have complete authority to make whatever changes you deem necessary in the establishment's management." Sophia took the papers and analyzed them carefully. "Mr. Montero," Sophia said finally, "you are fired, effective immediately." Ricardo fell to his knees. "Please, Miss Sophia, I have a family, children to support. It was just a mistake. It won't happen again." Sophia looked at him coldly. "A mistake, Mr. Montero, would be confusing me with someone else. What you did to me was judge and humiliate me deliberately because of my appearance. That's not a mistake, that's who you are." She turned to Miguel, the doorman. "You are fired too. I'm going to hire people who know how to treat all customers with respect." Miguel started crying. "Miss, please, I was just following the manager's instructions." "Following instructions?" Sophia raised her eyebrow. "The instructions were to humiliate and disrespect people who don't seem to have money? Interesting. That means you do this regularly with other people." The silence in the restaurant was total. Other employees watched the scene with a mixture of shock and fear. Sophia then did something nobody expected. She addressed all the employees present. "I want you all to know that I'm not a vindictive person. What happened here yesterday showed me a very serious problem in this establishment's culture. I won't punish those who didn't participate in the humiliation, but I will make changes so this never happens again. She pointed to the waitress who had commented about her the day before. You said I didn't look like someone who frequents this type of place. Can you explain to me what that look would be? The waitress stammered, I didn't mean anything bad. It was just a comment. It was just a comment, Sophia repeated. How many other comments like that do you make daily about customers you judge don't belong in this environment? The waitress couldn't answer. Sophia continued, starting today, this restaurant will be different. We'll maintain quality and elegance, but anyone who treats a customer disrespectfully will be fired immediately. It doesn't matter the appearance, age, or social class. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Dr. Henry handed more documents to Sophia. Miss Sophia, here are the powers of attorney for you to officially assume management of the other establishments as well. Sophia took the papers and looked at Ricardo, who was still kneeling. Mr. Montero, you said yesterday that I didn't even deserve to wash dishes here. Today I discover I'm the owner not only of this restaurant, but of 7 other similar establishments in the city. She made a dramatic pause. You know what this teaches me? That we should never judge a book by its cover. That humility and respect are values much more important than expensive clothes or appearance. And that karma, sooner or later, always settles the score. Ricardo made one more desperate attempt. Miss Sophia, I can change. I can be different. Please give me a second chance. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Montero, a second chance is something you give to someone who makes a mistake through carelessness or lack of knowledge. But what you did to me was deliberate. It was pure malice. And malicious people don't deserve second chances. She turned to the other employees. For all of you who are staying, I want to make it clear that there will be changes. We're going to implement training on customer service and human respect. Anyone who doesn't adapt to the new culture will be replaced. This establishment will be an example of how to treat people. Sophia announced her most impactful decision.